Hi, welcome to TaxTaker Talks. I'm your host, Ari Salafia, and today I am so excited to be joined by not just one, but two outstanding women from TestFit, Megan Holsinger and Laura Swartz. Megan is the Director of Customer Success at TestFit, bringing over 20 years of experience leading customer success and sales teams, primarily in fast-growing startups across tons of industries. So she's a true expert in driving customer engagement, retention, and growth, really big buzzwords in today's business climate. So excited to dive in there. Throughout her career, Megan has not only built and scaled customer success strategies, but has also played a pivotal role in their success, really bridging the gap between product sales and customer needs to really get to that long-term fuel that a business really needs. So her passion for fostering strong client relationships and delivering impactful results truly sets her apart. Joining her is Laura Swartz, a customer success manager at TestFit. Laura leads the implementation of TestFit's ecosystem into customers' feasibility processes. She is also a seasoned industry veteran with over 15 years of experience. She's not only a registered architect, she's got a master's in real estate. She's worked across architecture firms, a huge national REIT, and as a senior planner for the city of Austin. So Megan and Laura, welcome to the show. I'm so looking forward to diving into your experiences and learning just more about the innovative work that you're doing.
Thank you for having us. That was one of the more flattering introductions I think I've had in a long
That's
time.
great. We'll save it.
We could stop right here.
If anyone needs your bio at a future point, just,
Yeah, I'm
send
going
it
to
up.
take that. Yeah, it's awesome. We're happy to be here.
Customer success is just such a huge term these days, especially with companies really needing to buckle down, really look at their margins, their profitability. I just know across really no industry is really immune to the value of customer success. So I would just like to take a step back and ask y'all, like, what is your definition of customer success? And maybe what's kind of one common myth about your industry or your role in what you do that people might get wrong?
Yeah, I'll start with that. I mean, customer success has changed so much and in so many different ways in the last, I'd say 20 years, but really you could put a lot of that change in like the last, I'll say like 5 to 8 years, I think is where we've seen like the biggest shift in customer success. Back in the day when I started in CS, first of all, CS wasn't even a thing 20 years ago. It was like account management, and that was really what it was. And there wasn't really any sort of terminology around customer success. Fast forward to today, the CS role has changed. So there's components of CS now, in 2025 that are, support related and learning related and experience related. So like, how do you drive the growth of a customer through product based on the customer's experiences with the product? Like that is a whole arm of CS. The newest arm of CS is this concept of revenue generating customer success, which is 100% like the biggest buzzword right now. If you go look at anything CS related, it is about them no longer being a cost center in an organization, but being a revenue generating center in an org. That is a huge transformation from where we once were to where we are now and where we're going. Not only in where we're going, like with the human side of it, but also the AI side of it, and how AI is going to have a huge impact on the revenue generating activities that a CS person does. So yeah, I think the biggest misconception to answer your question is that CS is typically just sort of a reactive support-based type of a role that sort of sits there and says like, all right, I'll wait for the fire to come to me and then I'll put it out. And I can be really good at that. That's long gone. We've got to shelve that, and we've got to think about, sure, that's an important thing to do, help the customer out. The experience is great and that's great. But then how do we actually, like, what are the commercial components of that? How are we generating revenue from that? And how are we making that a more like positive feedback loop from the CS person back to product, back to eng, whatever your system is?
Yeah. I'm chomping at the bit here, right? Because finally, I think companies are they're either having to pay attention to the stats or it's just, it has, to your point, it's transformed, right? I mean, there's name how many headlines there's been and sources probably on this, but I think, whether you're SaaS or, an industry, kind of mature veteran business, it's something that really companies are having to grapple with. I think the stats around retention are just, they're undeniable. I think more recent stats say that, it's 4 to 5 times more expensive to acquire a customer, at least traditionally for like a SaaS business, than to retain. So on average, right, that would mean acquiring a customer would be somewhere, around, let's call it over $1. And then to keep that same customer could be, 25 cents, right? So that's massive. With that in mind, how do you think maybe companies are getting it wrong, or how would you say like TestFit maybe is like doing it right within customer retention as a form of customer success?
Yeah. I mean, listen, no company does it perfectly. So let's
Sure.
just
It's
throw
evolving
it out
always.
there.
Yeah.
And the smaller the company and the newer the company, there's a lot of experimentation going on. So don't let anyone tell you that like, you're a small startup and you've mastered the process of figuring out how this is going to work. That is not true. And you need to reiterate on it at all times to kind of figure out where you're at. For us at TestFit right now, we're in kind of a unique position because we are on the smaller side, but we also are kind of in the middle of still establishing product market fit. So we get the luxury of actually being able to test, retest, and do a bunch of different things all at once. And that's exciting to like a lot of people. I think the mindset is really where you want to focus on. So if I'm an experienced CS person, I've managed large accounts and I'm used to process and I'm used to having a renewals manager. I'm used to having somebody who is strictly focused on, different parts of the customer journey. I'm probably not going to want to go to a company that person does all of those things. Like we don't have a renewals manager at this point. I'd love to get to a place where we did, but we don't. And so I think that it really comes down to two things. One is how comfortable are you with ambiguity and change? And if, depending on your answer to that, I could give you a complete one set of directions on sort of how you might evolve a CS team. On the other side, it also has to do with like, what is your overall mindset around like failing and how comfortable are you with that? Because that's going to definitely impact, where you want to spend your time, smaller company, larger company. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So for any of the listeners that don't yet know what TestFit is, could y'all give us kind of the elevator pitch of what it is? And also, I think I saw that you guys run something like over your customers are running somewhere in the neighborhood of over like 3,000 deals and evaluations across your site weekly. So that's a lot. I would imagine, there's lots of also questions that can come up and, folks that are relying on the two of you and your team. So would love to hear about how you're kind of managing that.
Laura, I'll let you take that one because they're really relying on you. Let's be.
Yeah, because you're the implementer.
Sure. So yeah, that's with the real estate feasibility company. So we provide a platform that uses generative AI to provide quick feasibility studies. We're used to take maybe a couple weeks, maybe even a month or two. Now it's down to hours, even seconds. So it's pretty powerful to generate iterations where developers, general contractors, architects can have a first blush look at a feasibility study and decide if it's go or no go. So, getting into that decision process quickly, but it is new technology. And so we do, it's a new application as far as integrating that into existing processes. But for the internal customer organization, also implementation from our end, from the the vendor end, is critical in adopting and changing processes. So what Megan said as far as leaning into change and be okay with change management goes side by side with that. And so we do a great job under Megan's guidance as far as being prescriptive. So where sometimes I hear that customers are, always right. Well, sometimes they're not because they don't know what they don't know. And so making early on, assume the customer's right, kind of some passive language and emails, transitioning that, quickly pivoting to be a little bit more assertive or prescriptive. And so kind of guiding the customer through that process, through scheduling implementation sessions, encouraging training using our accelerator, which is a self-paced learning management system, really has helped, I think, ramp up the adoption of TestFit. So, it's a new technology, but it definitely has the ability to improve the time of feasibility studies. But also, we've heard from customers the quality of life, because you get those hours back and you can spend them, on the project itself, more projects, or just, internally with your own outside of work time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so many heavy hitters there, right? Like time, cost, and relative to that time back in your life.
Yeah,
What you want to do with that. I think we can all agree that we'd love less admin work, but also to kind of move things along faster so that you can, work on more projects. That's huge. So that's an amazing value prop. You're going to save weeks, months down to hours, and get some time with family back.
In today's competitive marketplace, though, the big thing you want to really focus on, and another big buzzword when it comes to CS right now, is time to value. So, and it is one of the hardest things for somebody in my role and in somebody in a leadership role at a company to measure. Because time to value is oftentimes very subjective. And that is one of the worst things you can do when you're trying to look at a metric is make it a subjective metric. Because that is just ripe for overstating or understating the true outcome, right? So, we save customers a lot of time and we save them a lot of money, but we need to understand, all right, what is their time to value from using a platform like TestFit, and interchange that. Anyone who's listening, if you're looking at your software and you're trying to figure out, or you're looking at whatever it is that you're selling, and you got to ask yourself the question, at what point does my customer look at what I'm providing them and say, I'm sold? And
Yep.
not in the pre-sales process. I'm talking about when you're when you're already a customer. When does that light bulb go on where you go, my gosh, I can't live without this? People refer to it as stickiness factor. People refer to it as a whole bunch of different things. In metric terminology, it's called time to value. Establishing what that is incredibly important, especially if you're bringing a product to market or you're trying to maybe reestablish yourself in a market or whatever it is. You've got to think about, what does that look like? We're still figuring it out at TestFit, in all transparency. We are still figuring it out. Laura's help has been amazing in the sense that she's been really listening to the customers that are coming on board and trying to figure out, when are they getting that aha moment? And what was the specific interaction they had with the platform that made it so that they went this is it. I'm now good. That will have a long-term impact on retention. It's going to have a long-term impact on any expansion that we do with that customer. So really, focusing on that time to value very early on. And understanding why a customer on the other side of it maybe perhaps fails to launch is equally as important, so that we can go back and take corrective measures and say, why did this customer fail to launch? Was it because they didn't get time to value quick enough? Was it because they didn't link back to their original business outcomes? What was it? That'll help us tenfold when it comes to a renewal conversation or expansion conversation that we'll have with them down the road.
So many key points there. Love the way that you broke down time to value too, right? Because it's one thing to get your customer to believe, okay, this is a desired, if I purchase this, software service package, I will be able to achieve my desired outcome. But that true win happens when it is actually achieved. So how do we get there depending on, the type of profile of your user, maybe the asset type that they're running through your software, and then over and over again, right? To create that long-term stickiness. I would imagine, and what I'm hearing, like in most companies, feeling comfortable in the uncomfortable and the ambiguity is probably a good skill to have within the organization. Because you're right? Especially in the architecture, engineering, construction world, right? We can throw so much technology at them, but like they've been, evaluating innovative tools, I think, across the board from big companies, large, but typically more of a laggard type space where they can identify that they have things that they could probably do better. And it all sounds snazzy when you can say like, I can save you weeks, but having someone actually participate to execute alongside you is kind of instrumental. So what are some of the tactics? Maybe Laura, this one's for you, that you're doing or trying to require or nudge your users so that they can get to that desired outcome faster.
So definitely, if we ramp up the onboarding, ramp up the training so it happens at the onset versus get spread out over a year, then the return on investment is realized faster. So it's really encouraging the scheduling component, being prescriptive of getting those sessions scheduled, getting the customers automatically enrolled in courses, really ensuring that the organization realizes the investment of time that it takes to learn a new application. TestFit's pretty intuitive, but not every customer has utilized massing software before. So sometimes architects might pick it up faster than, say, a general contractor, but a general contractor, if they invest the time in the training, can then quickly realize that return on investment. So it's getting the customer into the application and really supporting them through that onboarding process. So making sure that they feel comfortable reaching out for support so that they don't hit any walls, and also ensuring that we kind of step in to address the issues as soon as we see them happening. So even on the back end, if a customer submits a bug report, our engineering team is actively looking into what kind of bug they might be experiencing, and then hopefully working towards a fix, if there is a fix, in addressing that issue. And then we proactively reach out to the customer to help them get beyond certain hurdles. And we also do that with product feedback. We take product feedback from implementations, from support tickets back to the product team. And the customer success team now works directly with the product and engineering team to provide feedback and improve the product. So we are speaking on a daily, giving that customer feedback back to that team.
And so valued from the customer, right? I mean, I was just I just had a sales rep call me because she had me, submit a form for onboarding. And I was like, Austin isn't populating in here. And not only did she pick up the phone to call me, she emailed me saying, hey, just want to let you know, I'm in talks with our product team. Like, we're figuring out how to work this bug. In the interim, here's what I need to do. And I was just so impressed by, one, her speed to solve the problem, but then secondly, that it didn't seem so siloed within her organization, that, they were already working on a fix. And for me, it was a non-urgent matter, but it really went a long way. And then there was follow-up afterwards. So just those little edges, I think they are recognized, by the customer. And now I would be so much more inclined to, recommend that vendor or over another because of there's just that really small experience that went a long way for me.
So that's what you just described is amazing, but very difficult to scale.
Sure. I would imagine so.
All of you, every one of us, all three of us, anyone who's listening has had an experience where something similar like that just happened, but you go to the company and, you have to go through an elaborate support ticket request, and it's forever until you hear back from them. And usually that's because, you're one of thousands and thousands of customers. You may not be at a spend level where they're going to provide you with a certain level of service. And that's just the nature of doing business, right? Like, you just have to kind of know where you fall in like the business ecosystem. And I think that's sometimes a very hard pill for someone to swallow if they want. This concept, though, of agents and AI agents is going to become a big, big piece of
I'm obsessed with the agents topic. I mean, we might have to just have another call just on.
Yeah, but
what are you seeing there that you're
what you just described is the absolute future use case of what an agent will do sooner rather than later. They're going to pick up on signals. They're going to be able to dissect very quickly across multiple platforms all of your information, and then they are going to provide actual evidence-based support back to you in the moment. And when I say in the future, I'm not talking about like when we all thought there'd be flying cars in like 2018. No, I'm talking about like by the end of 2025, we will see actual agent mechanisms solving problems very quickly.
So exciting. I think that
It is.
your time horizon is totally
But talk about change
that allows
management.
folks like yours, come in and, offer the consultative time and the human time when appropriate and when needed, instead of being bogged down by potentially hours and hours of, support ticket.
Yeah.
Where you're going to get some outcomes.
The key for leadership folks right now is how do we marry those two? So how do we take advantage of something like an agent down the road, but marry it with the human brain and marry it with the concept that humans still can and will be able to produce work. They just will be aided by agents and aided by AI down the road. But that is going to be a huge impact. A lot of the things that everyone's hearing right now is how agents are going to help sales folks. I think the next big thing is going to be agents in the CS world and how that really impacts the commercial side of things, but also just the experience. Just like you had, like you had an experience and you loved that attention and you loved that they were there. That's exactly what we would hope that experience would be using something like an agent.
Right. Yeah. Because for every one good experience, I can probably count 5 or 6 bad ones, right? Because I also know where I fall on the hierarchy, whether that be from a payroll or insurance company.
Yeah.
A CRM or something, where I'm just maybe not their power user.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. And you'd hate to see some of the headlines where I think maybe it was customer success for maybe Klarna or someone like a big payments company. I think they said they had some big headline, right? They reduced their staff by like 30% across support. But I'm still just, I don't know. I'm a half glass full person, right? And I think those humans and skills, can be served in, a much more valuable way. And then let's do, more with less. We just had a guest that had 16 sales folks, raised went from their series B to C and has five now. Yep. Right. And then that's now they're actually investing more time in customer success and implementation because that's such a center for driving growth and additional revenue and upselling and all that good stuff. So here, so you're in the trenches though, right? Of problem solving, and because there's ambiguity and different types of users, and also you've got to lead them, right? I'm sure social proof can kind of help. Hey, we did this with this kind of person. Here's kind of what success they got. What might be an unconventional or creative approach you've taken maybe recently to solve a problem? And what did you learn from it? What can you share with us?
That's a great question. And it's really centered in the concept of not being afraid to face your fears around it. So I think a lot of folks get held back by, I don't want to try that because I'm afraid it's not going to be perfect or it's not going to succeed. One of the things that I have tried to do over the last couple of years in the leadership roles that I've taken on is come at problems in a way that works not just for the customer, because of course that's important, but also is right for your team. And for me, it's incredibly important that if I'm solving a problem, if I've been asked to give my advice on a situation, that the outcome is both beneficial for the customer, but also beneficial for the team. So, that may be something like a customer who's got some sort of escalation and they've showcased some sort of problem that they've had either in the software or something. And instead of, I think the old me or the me from the more like junior version of me that didn't have a ton of experience would have immediately gone and been like, okay, the customer, we need to do this, and like attacked it with like a process and just focused 100% on the customer. And what you end up doing, and I know this sounds a little counterintuitive, but what you end up doing is losing the strength that you're trying to create within a team member as well. And so, and by team member, I mean somebody that's like dealing with these problems on the front line, right? They're the ones that are actually like having to deal with it.
Sure.
And so I really try now to kind of think of it as like, okay, I need to come up with a use case for both of these people. There are two people involved in this situation. And I don't want it to just be 100% assuming that the customer is always right. Because Laura said earlier,
too.
they're not. And so the balance of that is really important. That really also helps with ambiguity, because I'm not solving the same problem the same way every single time. Like we are trying new things. So for instance, like right now, we just implemented recently some subscription model changes and pricing changes, and we are getting a lot of feedback from our customers, our existing customer base around that. And that's great. That's what we wanted. We wanted to hear that. And what I've been working with my team, who's responsible for like the revenue generating commercial side of it, is listen, like we're going to have to be creative in how we get these customers to continue to see value within TestFit, but also bring them to that, have them realize that value that TestFit has given them so far. And that may mean a price increase, and that may mean a change to how they're doing it. But it's important that you're comfortable this early on in where we're at with TestFit in particular, that you're just good with change and you're trying things out. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give. And if you think you're going to just do the same thing over and over again, I would encourage you to go to a company that is at least a post-series C, even D, or something that's more publicly traded, because at that point you will have much more structure. And this is the SOP. This is what you do for this. This is how you answer that, so on and so forth.
Great point there too, right? Because I think especially with early stage companies, right, that mindset around like maybe internally they know the customer's not always right, but they just want to, please the customer because so hard to acquire that customer, or they want to keep that customer. But that really has, maybe unintended stress internally in the company. Just like at the forefront, maybe of sales, is it a fit, right? One, for the customer, and two, for the business. Can the business make money with this customer? On implementation or delivery? That's huge, right? If we're expecting that area to be an area for retention, then that also there has to be some importance placed internally.
And supporting those people internally is an incredibly long-term investment that people lose sight of very quickly.
Right? So employee retention goes hand in hand, with
hand in hand with that. That's why I really do try very much to think about how it impacts a team member, not just how it impacts, which I realize sounds very counterintuitive coming from someone that leads a customer success organization. You'd think to yourself, well, Megan, like, isn't the customer always like at the forefront? Well, of course it is. But the people that work for me that enable those customers are also equally at the forefront. And those two, if you don't have like a healthy marriage between those two groups, that's going to be problematic no matter what you do.
And I could speak on that end as far as Megan's support and responsiveness to different types of customers. And Megan encourages, the perfectionist and the architect is there, but, the importance of being responsive and, giving the customer information that's valuable. It doesn't necessarily have to meet a certain standard as far as, versus like addressing it in the moment. Being flexible with kind of that response from the customer. So Megan's always encouraged kind of, to approach a problem, but don't sit on it,
Yeah, that's big. Yeah. I think it comes with experience and it comes with maturity for sure. I like the approach to flexibility. Was going to actually ask if there's an underrated skill in your kind of space that deserves more attention across your team. Have you noticed that there's a couple of skills that are within customer success that are like, oh, that person is going to help move the needle for us because they have that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think let's differentiate between skills and behavioral traits.
Yes.
Because they're two very different things. I don't come from an AEC industry. Like I have absolutely no experience in it whatsoever. I came to TestFit literally having no clue what a feasibility study was. I mean, hand up, I swear to God, I had no idea what I was doing. I've learned a lot in the last almost 2 years that I've been here. But my experience was they hired me for a different set of skills, right? A different set of experience. So my team, I'm fortunate that my team has a lot of industry based experience. They have a lot of skill set. They can actually manipulate the software in some of the most intense and amazing ways that I've ever seen anyone do it. So I'm very, very lucky. What my job was to get to know the team as I started out and understand like what drives them behaviorally speaking, and what are the things that motivate them, and what are the things that get them up to go to work every single day and want to do a really good job. And based on what I've learned at TestFit, and based on what I've learned throughout my career, is the biggest sort of behavioral component is your emotional IQ, your emotional EQ, or that's redundant, but EQ, that is a huge driver. So the ability to read the room, the ability to understand, have an empathetic and listening component to how you operate when you're listening to the customer, not being impulsive. I know one of the things I coach on a lot is a very quick reactiveness to something. And, that's not always the best approach, because you tend to not understand the entire story. So I would say EQ for me, when I look at someone who is really able to move the needle, it's because they can read a room, they can see the forest through the trees, they can understand that there are multiple different personalities at play, and they're able to change their own behavior in order to get a result out of what that is. That sounds like I'm saying you should be manipulative, and I'm not.
No, that translates. So, I mean, that translates into life, right? I think most of us, value self-awareness.
Self-awareness, being humble about the things like that you don't know. I mean, ego, there's nothing worse than having somebody who has a huge ego and who needs to tell you that they're right or that they know something more or whatever. That to me, I've seen move the needle in a different direction. In the direction that you want. So I think that's an important thing to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, any traits kind of stick out to you?
I think to me, it's, and this could be, in any position I've been in customer base and internal base, is not being afraid for change. Again, it goes back to that change management and that fear factor. And I think it gets in the way of, positive momentum and improvement and upskilling, speaking up with ideas, contributions. So I think being leaning into change and removing that fear factor. So if somebody has those blocks, it's unfortunate because we're not getting all of their potential and not realizing that. So
yeah,
kind of leaning into change.
Totally evolved, I swear, into kind of like mindset tips. So I love to hear these things. And I think our audience is going to be really pleased with that. Because I mean, it's a holistic kind of approach. It's not just like the work that we're doing, but it's how we're approaching it and how we're evaluating, successes or milestones we're trying to achieve. With that said, a question I really always like to ask is, we talked about customer and a little bit now of employee success. How would the two of you define success for yourselves? Professionally, personally, live in an intertwined world?
That's a good question.
Changes, I'm sure. Yeah.
The definition of success for me is that I am able to, first and foremost, provide for my family. I'm able to be a good example to my daughter and my son that, a lot of work is involved if you want to get to a place where you are responsible for the outcomes of a business and the outcomes of humans that work for that business. I think, for me, the end of the day, I feel successful if I've helped one of my team members or colleague, get over a particularly rough set of circumstances, or where I've been able to influence them or give them advice in some sort of a way that can help them move forward. That to me is successful. I also feel for me, I've had the privilege of being able to work in a lot of different industries, so which is really cool for me. And I feel like that is one of my biggest sort of differentiators and keys to success is that I've worked, with the mortgage industry. I've worked with Amazon resellers. I've worked with sales professionals in tech spaces. I'm now working with real estate developers and architects and GCs. Like, to me, that's a kind of a good indicator of that I've been able to kind of adapt to the audience at hand. And I would hope that I could continue to do that moving forward.
And my idea of success, I guess, would be to continue to improve upon the experience that our customers have. So improving the product, making it more valuable to them, and so enriching it by bringing ideas, creative, innovative ideas back to the product team. But really, it's when that light bulb goes off for a customer that gives me a lot of joy. It's like when I used to mentor junior architects, when they start to understand code and then realize how valuable that is in their whole design process. It's the same, see that light go off with customers, and they all of a sudden have an aha moment that, oh my gosh, I just got back 5 hours of my day, or maybe like 5 days, back into this process where now I can reinvest that into other development goals. So helping improve the quality of life of other customers, people in general.
I love it. I love it so much. It's funny how much I think for more junior folks, right? Success is so tied to like a monetary gain. And of course, like we all want, financial freedoms, stability, all those things to provide for ourselves, our families. But it's really, really cool to see. And I think for some of the viewers that might be, more junior to the three of us, right? To see that, actually some of the things that matter in translator, right, is the ability to get to help folks from so many different types of industries, see their wins, see them get that quality time back. You could get some warm and fuzzies from some customers.
We hear those stories all the time, and it's exciting.
Yeah.
And it definitely motivates us to keep going forward.
I got an email yesterday from a prospect who is working with one of our sales folks. And through it, they went through some training that Laura and our colleague Matt provide every day. And this prospect had such a good experience with Matt on the training that he mentioned it to one of our AEs, Sean, and said, listen, like this guy was just fabulous. Like he was awesome. And Sean said, you know what, you should really tell his boss that. Like, I'm sure. And so the guy took time out of his day to email me and give specifics on what he appreciated about Matt's approach to the training and what he was able to help him with. And last night I was at the dinner table with my kids and my husband, and we were talking about, we do roses and thorns. So, what's one happen?
High, low.
Yeah, high, low, whatever it is. And, we don't always get to do that because they're older and it's hard to get us all at the dinner table. But when we do, we try to do it and walked around. And so my rose was that I had this customer reach out to me with such positive experience about one of the folks that works for me. And to me, that was it was great. Like, it was such a good thing that I needed at that moment in time. I was so proud of Matt and all the hard work that he's been doing. And, there's a lot of stuff that's behind the scenes that, people don't see, of all the things that it takes to get these things working and functioning and things like that. And it was just a really good thing. And that to me was like a sign of success. It was a good day, and it was a good sign that like, I must be doing something right if Matt Londe is able to provide like such great training. He's an amazing guy. To have that translate then into a customer coming back full circle was just a great moment.
Absolutely. Actually, this past year started a kudos channel inside of Slack because we were getting these messages, and I was like, gosh, we're always going on to the next, next project, next, maybe not problem, but like, right, we're just so busy, and we sometimes can forget to celebrate the small wins along the way. And that's just, it makes me so happy to see, folks, especially, other team members giving other team members kudos, and not just from customers, right? It can be something that they helped each other with, but there's nothing like Yeah, there's nothing like a testimonial like, wow, like that person named, really, really was
The time.
for me. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So what would be a tip, for folks that are looking at customer success or looking to grow their skills within kind of your space, even if it's industry pros, what would be a tip to inspire those looking to further sharpen their skills or perhaps even look into getting to do what the two of you do?
Yeah. The first thing you want to ask yourself is how comfortable are you with selling? And selling can be a really scary word to a lot of people, and it often comes with a very negative connotation around it. And you get the ick factor
Totally.
when you think of sales, right? And this coming from somebody who was a sales, and I still consider myself to be a salesperson at heart. Back to our original topic when we first started this, revenue generating components of CS is going to continue. And so if you are currently in a role that maybe does not have a commercial aspect to it, but is probably trending in that direction, I would encourage you to go out and familiarize yourself with the different metrics and terminology that you're probably going to want to become very familiar with. Revenue retention rate, or gross, net, anything that you can think of, the difference between gross retention and
Acronyms,
like all
language around it.
Go start listening to how whether it's on LinkedIn or podcast or whatever, how are people selling into existing accounts? Does that feel okay to you? And if the answer is yes, that feels okay to me and that excites me, then I would definitely have you keep moving in that direction. If the answer is no, that makes me feel a little bit like nervous or scared, I would still say take a moment with it, take a look at it. You might surprise yourself, but there's still going to be plenty of roles that aren't going to have a revenue generating component in C. I just think they're going to become fewer and fewer. And so I think it's in everyone's best interest to kind of familiarize yourself with what that means so that you're not lost at the table. You ultimately want to be in a position where you have a seat at the table when the time comes, when you are in control of what it is that you want to do with your career. And the only way of doing that is by actually going out and educating yourself on the things that, you like and you don't like. And that'll give you a better opportunity. If you want to, the other thing I'll say is if, a lot of folks, I see this a lot in like younger populations who are just coming into the workforce, they want to manage others. That is something I see all the time. And I say this to every single person that has ever said that to me. Be careful what you wish for.
Yes.
I would be lying if I said that I loved every second of my day managing people. That is just absolutely not true. I love it a majority of the time, but absolutely not 100% of the time. And if you think that is going to make you more successful or make you whatever, then okay, that's on you. But I'm here to tell you, having now done it for a decade plus at this point, it is really hard to remain a strategic player in an organization while also managing teams on a day-to-day.
Yeah. Buyer beware on that. I can
Total buyer beware.
I know I do see that more so with juniors, like, oh yeah, I just see myself, managing a team. Okay, have you done that? Because, a seasoned executive, would also say, I'd love to be an individual contributor my whole life, right?
I did my last job, I went from leading and then I took a hiatus and went back into being an individual contributor for 3 years. And it was delightful for 3 years. Then I was like, you know what? I miss managing people and I miss doing that. And so
you don't
I got into it. But I knew
She's good at it, Megan.
Well, that is so funny. And then, I think it's a cautionary tale, but also really, no matter if you're introverted, extroverted, like you have to, even if it's uncomfortable, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to, collaborate with others, whether that be customer facing salesy or not, right? I think, big companies, I've been seeing a big trend in. It doesn't matter if you're not in a traditionally customer facing, you might be in just finance and ops, but guess what? You're going to take a week or two out of the year and be in the trenches with the CS team or the service team, just because you can so lose sight of what that experience is when it just starts to look like a number and not relationship. So I think that's a really good piece of advice to, hey, like, you might not be comfortable with that and that's okay, but just like at least know it's coming, or, there's going to be a time where you're probably, going to be faced with,
Yeah.
the necessary duty of diving in.
Yeah, you now at the time educate yourself. There's a lot of resources that you can use, and so at least you're better prepared for when that time comes. It doesn't feel like it's hitting you like a ton of bricks, right? You kind of read the room, read the writing on the wall. Like it's clear as day in a lot of these situations, and a lot of us just tend to not want to look at it, and I don't want to talk about it, but you got to talk about it, and it's going to change.
Absolutely. Is there any news about TestFit? Or we'll definitely link the show notes and links to TestFit so they can come check out your product. Also, your profiles on LinkedIn, but is there any news or a call to action you'd like to share, something that we should know about or stay in the loop with?
There's lots of new stuff. We've recently added a bunch of new case studies to our website, which I love, mostly because there are customers who get to talk about the actual real value that they receive from TestFit. We've been able to bring on a lot of great new customers as well that we're very proud of. We have a great internally who handles all of our social and is fantastic at posting on Instagram, posting on LinkedIn, and showing TestFit in action, which I think is really cool. So he'll post like little videos of like being able to yield, more parking out of a particular situation than not, although there's always comments on parking and things like that, but they're very cool to look at. How about that? So
absolutely. I'm in downtown Austin today. People always are talking about parking.
Yeah, and people have very different opinions on it, which I won't get into. That's a different podcast, but yeah, there's a lot of great new stuff on our website. It's much more intuitive. We have a lot of, if you are in the industry and you are looking to see what TestFit could do for you, I would encourage you to come to the website. We actually have a free product called Urban Planner that's completely free to use and really valuable for a lot of folks. No credit card required. I'm not going to try to sell you a set of Ginsu knives. There's nothing. You just go on in and you could hang out. We really want folks to understand that there is actual immediate value right away. And then from there, you can decide if you want to upgrade and go from there. But yeah, I would say head to our website, take a look, follow us on socials. We do put a lot. Our YouTube channel is growing. Playlists are being developed and revamped as we speak. So that is definitely something to look at.
Love it. Well, we're going to make sure to post on all the platforms with y'all, and we'll link this, but it's testfit.io. And Laura and Megan, thank you so much for joining today. This was such a treat.
Thank you for having us.